Hello to all you Trekyardians out there. Captain Foley and Commander Cocking returning yet again with an amazing guest star, Mr. John Eaves, everyone.
Yay, hi.
Hi,
So,
John.
welcome back, John. It's always a pleasure to have you here. So, today we'll be discussing one of the Enterprise lineage that Mr. Eaves brought to us. No, not the Enterprise E. That's in another episode. No, today we're going to be looking at the Enterprise B from Star Trek Generations and talk about a ship that could almost be considered a one-hit wonder if it wasn't for its iconic registry number. Now, just to be clear, we are doing a full Trekyards episode on the Excelsior and all of her progeny very soon. So this is just an episode with the designer himself, which, as always, gets into the design process and all the behind-the-scenes stories, etc. So all the facts, numbers, and stats on this ship will be presented in the regular episode. But let's get right into the conversation and not wait until Tuesday, as we have all the information today. Most of you will get that. Some of you will not. Even though, ironically enough, we are filming on a Tuesday, so it is Tuesday. It arrived with the medical department and the photon torpedoes. Let's proceed.
Well done.
Yeah, that's right, guys. So, as we all know, the Enterprise B is a variant of the sleek Excelsior class, which we first saw in Star Trek 3. Yeah, so John, tell us about how you got involved and got picked to do this design for Generations, and did you feel any pressure about designing the next Enterprise and the next Enterprise to come after Kirk's Enterprise?
There you go. Well, the way it started, I was a model maker at the time. I worked at Apogee and Boss Films, and I had met Herman Zimmerman through a friend of mine, Phil Edgerly, and Herman needed someone to make him some models of the Enterprises, and so Phil recommended that I made them for him. So I called him up. He goes, "I'd like a model of this, this, and that I can display." And so I go, "All right." So I made him the models, and I did a drawing of how they laid out on the stands. And he goes, "Oh my goodness, you can draw as well. I might need you at one particular time or another." So we hung up. I dropped off his models, and he was very happy. And I never thought anything would happen. And one day he called up, and he goes, "One of my illustrators, Jim Martin's moving on to movies, and I need a replacement in Deep Space Nine." So all right, I'll take it. I was so excited to get into the art department. I'd only done one drawing job before with Sequest with Mr. Spielberg, and it was fun. That was something I always wanted to do, was get in the art department. So Herman gave me that opportunity. And about 3 or 4 episodes into Deep Space Nine, the news of Generations, the movie, came up. And he walks by and he goes, "Would you like to work on Generations as well as the show?" I go, "Yeah, that'd be great." He goes, "Okay, first thing we got to do is we got to make a new Enterprise." And I go, "Wow, that'd be awesome." And he goes, We're not making a new model. Budget-wise, we can't do it, but we're going to turn the Excelsior into the Enterprise B. So start thinking about it." And he walked away, and that's kind of where that started.
So was there any pressure to design the next Enterprise, or was that just all excitement?
I think I was too naive to feel the pressure of it, and I was just used to getting things thrown at my desk at that time. And it sank in later, like, wow, I'm working on an Enterprise. This is fantastic. And basically, the Excelsior was one of my favorite ships. So Bill George had done the building of that, and it was a different time. I think I'd mentioned one time, but in those days, there wasn't really an art department for all that stuff. ILM was kind of in charge of the effects, and they would design the stuff as well. And what they would do is they'd make a series of study models, lay them out, and the director would walk by and pick which one he liked. So Leonard Nimoy walked by and goes, "Oh, I like that one there," and that's how the Excelsior came to be. And I remember when it hit the screen, it's like, "Oh, that is the coolest ship I ever saw in my life. That beautiful, sweeping, long starship." And so it was a great treat to be able to turn that into the Enterprise B. And I thought it was a really great idea to use that as the base.
Cool.
So okay. Got a lot of pressure, and it was just we moved on.
Perfect. Okay, now we know this is a design variant to the Excelsior class. The Excelsior was launched in 2285, with the Enterprise B being launched in 2293. Can you please explain some of the major differences? And was it classed as an Excelsior class refit or its own designation? And did the art department have any, in-house name that they called it?
As far as the classes go, that was something we didn't deal with. That was in the writing department or the effects department. That would find out when the movie came out most of the time. Later films, we were a part of that process. Mike Akuda and Herman Zimmerman would kind of come up with ideas, and that would kind of help determine where it would go with the writers. But as far as the Excelsior Enterprise B went, there was really nothing that was brought up when I was working on it that it was going to be a different class. As far as I knew, it was just Excelsior, and we were doing a retrofit of it. It wasn't meant to be a different ship. It was meant to be just a retrofit, and that was something we're very familiar with in the Star Trek world. So, but there's very script-oriented design elements that were going to determine where the ship went. And being that it was going to be a new motion picture ship, we had to do things that would be added to an existing model as opposed to really architecturally changing the ship. We had to do things that could add on, be very easy and affordable. And the one particular element that we had to come up with was Kirk has to get hit by a lightning bolt from the energy ribbon. And so it couldn't be the saucer. They didn't want that. They didn't. The script kind of called for it being near the deflector dish. And just looking at the ship and the stuff, there was no way to do it without blowing up the entire ship. You just couldn't pick the side without causing a lot of damage. So thinking about this, I brought in a model of an old World War II aircraft called the PBY Catalina, and it's a flying rescue boat. And it has this beautiful boat bottom. And here, I'll show you a miniature of it. And so this is a model Ed Marecki built for ILM, and they wound up using this in some of the Deep Space Nine episodes, smaller model and easier to film. And so I added this detail on the front that kind of matches that PBY. And what it does is it makes a lip so the energy ribbon can hit it without wiping out anything except that particular area of the ship. So you get that damage in there, the deflector can still work, and everyone's okay except Kirk. And so that's where that design element came. And what was nice about it is it altered the architecture completely to take it from the Excelsior world into an Enterprise world, a whole different ship without doing a lot. So this was the only major detail they actually had to alter on the original model. And it was basically an add-on, a very busy one, because they had to tether it with fillers and stuff to make it work.
So John, John, are you telling us that the main detail for the Excelsior refit, this iconic bit was pretty much just built to kill Kirk?
Yes, exactly.
It was refitted to kill.
Element was put there to kill Kirk. So the whole ship was basically designed to kill Kirk, is what it was. So. So there you go. But after that, everything wound up being add-on elements. So it was easy. They could make parts and just stick them on the Excelsior, take them off, and it'd be the Excelsior again. Unfortunately, the body couldn't be altered back, but it was kind of at the end of its run. So there you go.
Do you think we should make a name, a class for this ship? I think let's call it the Eaves class.
Probably.
That was actually Samuel's idea from earlier, but yeah.
Don't want to do that.
So when you got word that you're designing the Enterprise B, did you think the Excelsior class as the next step made sense, or were there any alternate designs? Because you tend to sketch variations. Was there any other variations maybe in the first day that you thought, let's do this to the existing model, or any little pieces that you thought that'd be perfect add-on that just weren't able to put on due to budget, which obviously, as you talked about, is the main reason why they had to reuse the Excelsior. Anything different?
No. From kind of my point of view, it seemed logical that you'd go with that. And working in the model shop, I knew how that budget thing worked. And so I thought, well, if they have to do that, it's an excellent choice. So I didn't think much beyond that. That's a great idea to use the Excelsior part. And there wasn't a lot of choices either. You had tons of the Constitution class that, it wouldn't work. And I'm not sure, but I think the C had been drawn at that time. It might have been. I don't recall. I think there was a TNG ship, and that one couldn't go anywhere because it was very specific. And so the Excelsior made sense that it was a great looking starship and it was easy to adapt and it was available. So that's kind of how that was determined on the use of it. And I never thought twice about it not being in the right or the wrong place. It just seemed correct.
As for any alternate designs, was there any details that you thought they'd be perfect that they just couldn't put on due to budget?
No, ironically with this ship, everything we drew was very specific, and Herman was right next to me, so he would always come out and add notes. And Mike Akuda sat behind me, and he was always a gentleman. He would never put his advice in unless you asked. And so I'd always ask him, I go, hey, these ships, could I ask you about this? He goes, oh, I was hoping you would, because I had some comments I'd like to say. So he would add a lot of advice as well. But our whole point of view was to make this ship identifiable from different views. So you knew the Excelsior from the top to bottom, every way. You'd see it and you go, hey, that's the Excelsior. So my job was basically to design something, if you look and go, that's kind of the Excelsior, but it's not. And so on the saucer, we added these two huge, they wound up being called impulse engines in the end. But originally when I was drawing it, I kind of wanted to expand that transwarp drive, and that's kind of what that was. That was kind of an extension of that that technology in a thought process kind of way. So that's where they came from. And of course, the main impulse engines were the ones that were already existing in the center of the back of the strip. So, but when they did the breakdown, they named those impulse engines. So that's kind of where the definition came from. But originally, transwarp drive stuff. And then to change the nacelles, we added some fins on the back, added a kind of a cowling up on the front. And one detail I really wanted, I drew it in, but it didn't make it. There are these two little fins up on the top of two little dorsal fins on top of the saucer. And they didn't make it in the end. And I guess they had already been removed for other incarnations of the ship. But that was the only detail that I had drawn in and didn't see it in the final version. Then, of course, they changed the paint a little bit.
The Enterprise B was an Excelsior refit or a retrofit, as you said. And we saw original Excelsior class ships in TNG and DS9 battle scenes, despite the film Generations coming up before the Dominion Wars arc in Deep Space Nine. So the refit existed in terms of design and physical model. We know the refit in the form of the USS Lakota appeared in the later DS9 episode, but why did we see the Excelsior class and not the refit in every battle scene?
There was kind of a distinction at Paramount and CBS. It was Viacom at the time, but they tried to keep movie properties separate from TV shows. And if they had a hero ship in the feature film, they would necessarily not use it in television unless necessary. And it wasn't very often. But the battle scenes were mostly done at Image G for Deep Space Nine, and they had a whole slew of models over there. And one of the ways they could scapegoat around using a hero ship was to change the registration number and the name of the ship, so they could use the Galaxy class and so on. And they could get model kits. They'd use model kits as opposed to the filming miniatures because they were huge. They would range anywhere from 6 feet to 11 feet. And Image G, it was just an enormous process to do that, especially with the lighting, because they'd have to do all this lighting. Their blue screen wasn't that big. So it was easier to make smaller models, and if they could get a kit, they would use kits. And so that's kind of why you won't really see a motion picture ship in a television show, because they kind of keep, like I said, they kind of keep that property separate. And for filming reasons, it was just a major event.
Well, we do see, the Akira and the Steam Runner and Sabe in DS9 battle sequences, but I guess it kind of makes sense because, as you say, they used smaller models, commercial models for the Excelsior, because they've got the Lakota or the Enterprise B model, but it's that huge 9-footer, so I guess filming that would be too much for the DS9 battle, so I guess that's probably the main reason?
True. Probably so, and they were also right in the verge of going from computer to practical miniature to computer CGI models, and so you see a mishmash of that kind of thing. They weren't completely at that realm yet. The end of Deep Space Nine did the switch. I think it was the very last season, and then of course Enterprise was all CG. But they were right in that edge. They could, if they had the models from ILM, it was something they could use and they could put it in the background. As long as background stuff, it wasn't a big deal. And so that's kind of how that world was determined. And a lot of the guys that do the effects, they're not up on the history and the fan stuff like we are. And so they had to do shots. So they put ships together. We got these models, let's use these. And the effects director we had at Paramount was Peter Lorison at the time. And he was all about, making sure the shots worked and stuff. So that's kind of how that world came together. If they had it, they could use it. They'd have to go through approval process. Okay, can we use these ships, their background? As long as their background, they're cool. And that's kind of how that worked out.
Can you think of an in-canon reason, though, why only the classic Excelsior was used rather than the refit? Because, surely it's the refit. We only ever see refit, Enterprises.
Probably because they had this model before it was the B. It was a smaller Excelsior class. And I think it was originally built for background shots.
But why in canon, John? Why in the universe did the refit...
I know. It's because it's the flagship, and they probably only built like 5. It was like a sub-series of ships that were kind of experimental and never really caught on, maybe? Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. And again, this world changes weekly between what writer's on, what director's on. So as we're staff, and we're always there, so we know these things and think about it. New guy comes in, and he's kind of got a whole new world to catch up on. And Rick Sternbach and Mike Akuta made this Bible book that would, as close as possible, break down the stuff in a quick reference for the writers and stuff. And like I said, every week something was different. So with new people coming in and going, and so they'd be guided as best they could. But a lot of those decisions were just made on what looked good in the shot, and that division probably kept that canon ship from being in in the shows because it was established in a motion picture as an Enterprise B, and they didn't want to crisscross it. So apparently, it was supposed to be an individual single ship.
But we did actually see the Excelsior refit in episode DS9, like we mentioned earlier, in the season 4 episode 12, Paradise Lost. Now, keep in mind that this episode was based in 2372, while Enterprise B was launched in 2293, so it's a 79-year gap. That's a very old ship, and the USS Lakota was said to be, or was the first Excelsior refit we'd seen apart from the Enterprise B. And despite this 79-year age gap, the Lakota was actually heavily upgraded with new phases and a complement of brand new quantum torpedoes, which were first seen a year before in 2371. The Lakota was also equipped with new enhanced shields, and was able to take on the USS Defiant, which, as we know, was a pretty powerful, meaty ship. Really does show the Lakota's enhanced abilities. So I know you're not necessarily responsible for these your decisions, John, but why do you think the Lakota or the Enterprise B version was seen for this episode specifically, and how did it feel to see it again, even in the small screen, and in one of the handful of Starfleet on Starfleet battles?
Mm-hmm. Well, most of these things happened in another world, which is across the studio a lot, which was another world. We had our art department and construction. We were together and we teamed up. And what happened on the other side of the lot would usually go without us knowing. So as far as effects would go, if it didn't directly relate with us, we didn't know. So it was a surprise just to see it on the screen. Like, oh gosh, look what they used. They used that one for that particular scene. And again, it was a model they had, and they, like I said, whatever made the shots work. Like the last episode, 175, where they had this alternate universe where everything went back in time. Oh, that's the JJ world. Sorry, but no, it was basically what they had on the shelf and what they had available to them at the time. And they obviously broke their own rule of not keeping a ship canon at that point. But that was our rule that we had. That's canon. You can't use that one for the show.
And it looked cool. It was cool though. It was nice to see it again. So
yeah, and it was the same with the sets because we'd have the TNG sets that we used for the movies, but we had to alter them to a certain point where they wouldn't be the same.